Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Number dead air, the wind howls differently up here. That's the first thing I noticed when I arrived at Station 27. Not the peeling paint on the weatherboard exterior, not the way the metal roof panels rattled like teeth chattering in the cold, but the wind. It doesn't just blow, it speaks. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it screams, but it always feels like it's trying to tell me something. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. 3 weeks ago, I was a respected meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Now I'm not sure what I am anymore. The assignment seemed straightforward. Visit the decommissioned weather station atop Blackrock Mountain, catalog remaining equipment, and prepare a final assessment before the building is demolished next spring. A simple 2-week job. The station had been abandoned for nearly a decade after budget cuts forced consolidation of monitoring sites across the region. Technology had made places like Station 27 obsolete. Remote sensors and satellites could do the work without human hands turning dials or eyes reading gauges. "It'll be peaceful," my supervisor had said, not looking up from her computer. "Think of it as a paid retreat. Catch up on your reading." I should have known something was wrong when the helicopter pilot refused to wait. "I'll be back in 2 weeks, he'd shouted over the rotor noise, already backing away toward his aircraft. "Stay in the building, the trails aren't maintained anymore." Before I could ask why he seemed so eager to leave, he was gone, a shrinking speck against the vast gray sky. I stood alone on the helipad, my duffel bag at my feet, watching until the sound of the rotors faded completely. The station sat perched on a rocky outcrop near the mountain's summit, a 2-story structure with a small observation tower rising from its center. Solar panels, added during the station's last upgrade in 2005, tilted toward the sky on the south-facing roof. A cluster of weather instruments, anemometers, rain gauges, and other sensors stood on a raised platform nearby, motionless and presumably dead. I used the key I'd been given to open the front door, which protested with a long, pained creak. The air inside was stale but not unpleasant. Someone had cleaned before the final shutdown. No dust sheets covered the furniture, but everything had the untouched quality of a museum display, a preserved moment from another time. The first floor contained a small kitchen, a common area with a sofa and bookshelves, and an office with an ancient desktop computer. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and access to the observation tower. Everything was basic but functional. I chose the bedroom that faced east and unpacked my things. The station had its own generator and water tank, and I'd brought enough food to last my stay. After settling in, I decided to begin my inventory of the equipment. That's when I first noticed something odd. The main monitoring station was housed in a room adjacent to the office. Banks of equipment lined the walls: barometers, hygrometers, data recorders, and radio equipment. All of it should have been dormant, disconnected from power for years. But the barometric pressure gauge was active, its needle quivering slightly as if responding to changes in the atmosphere. I checked the power connections. Everything was unplugged, just as it should have been. I tapped the glass face of the instrument. The needle jumped, then settled back to its gentle oscillation. "Old equipment," I muttered to myself. "Probably just residual mechanics." I made a note in my inventory and continued cataloging the rest of the instruments. By evening, I'd finished the first floor and prepared a simple dinner. As I ate, I watched the sun set through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. The isolation was palpable but not unpleasant. I'd always been comfortable with solitude. That night I dreamt of dials turning on their own, gauges spinning wildly, and a voice beneath the howling wind, repeating words I couldn't quite understand. I woke at 3:17 a.m., according to my watch. The bedroom was freezing, my breath visible in the darkness. I pulled the blankets tighter and listened. The wind had died down, leaving a silence so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. Then I heard it, a faint clicking sound from downstairs, rhythmic, mechanical, like a relay switching on and off. I told myself it was just the building settling, or perhaps some small animal that had found its way inside. But as I lay there, unable to fall back asleep, the clicking grew more insistent, more purposeful. It wasn't random, it had pattern, intention. Eventually, I couldn't stand it any longer. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way downstairs, the wooden steps creaking beneath my feet. The clicking led me to the monitoring room. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw the telegraph machine, an antique piece kept more for historical value than practical use, tapping out a message, its key moving up and down as if pressed by invisible fingers. The paper tape meant to receive the message was long gone, but the machine continued its ghostly communication. I approached slowly, my scientific mind searching for rational explanations, perhaps electrical surges in the old wiring. Maybe the solar panels were still feeding power into the system during the day, and some timer had activated. I reached for the power switch and turned it firmly to the off position. The clicking stopped immediately. I stood in the sudden silence, my heart pounding, and waited. Nothing happened. Satisfied, I returned to bed, though sleep eluded me until the first gray light of dawn filtered through the curtains. The next morning, I convinced myself I'd dreamt the whole incident. I made coffee and prepared for my second day of inventory. This time, I'd tackle the observation tower and the external equipment. The tower offered a 360-degree view of the surrounding mountains and valleys. On a clear day, you could see for miles. But that day, a thick fog had settled around the station, limiting visibility to just a few yards beyond the building. The world beyond was a blank white void. The external weather instruments were mounted on a platform accessible from the tower. As I stepped outside, the fog swirled around me, cold and damp against my skin. I approached the instrument array, clipboard in hand. Every single device was active. The anemometer cup spun rapidly, despite the near-still air. The wind vane pointed resolutely northwest, though I couldn't feel even the slightest breeze from that direction. The thermograph pen scratched across its rotating drum, recording temperature fluctuations that weren't happening. I stood transfixed, watching these instruments respond to weather conditions that didn't exist. My scientific training demanded an explanation. Perhaps the fog contained unusual electromagnetic properties that were affecting the equipment, or maybe years of exposure to the elements had damaged the calibration mechanisms. I spent hours examining each instrument, disconnecting power sources, even removing batteries where applicable. One by one, they fell silent under my ministrations. Satisfied, I returned inside to warm up and continue my inventory. That night, I was awakened not by clicking, but by a low, steady hum. I followed the sound to the radio room, where the emergency broadcast system equipment that should have been decommissioned and partially removed years ago was fully operational. The receiver lights glowed green in the darkness, and the transmission indicator flashed rhythmically. I turned it off. Like the telegraph machine, it complied immediately. This pattern continued for days. Each morning, I would find equipment that I had personally shut down the day before running again. Sometimes it was the same instruments, sometimes different ones. The hygrometer would spin wildly, recording impossible humidity levels. The seismograph would scratch out readings suggesting earthquakes that I never felt. The Geiger counter would click frantically, then fall silent when I approached. I began to doubt myself. Was I turning these devices off completely? Was I missing backup power sources? I created a detailed checklist and photographed each instrument after powering it down, documenting my work meticulously. It made no difference. They always reactivated. By the end of the first week, I was sleeping poorly and jumping at shadows. The isolation was getting to me, I decided. I needed human contact. I tried using the station's satellite phone, but all I got was static and occasionally what sounded like distant voices speaking too faintly to understand. On the 8th day, the fog that had surrounded the station since my second day finally lifted, revealing the stark beauty of the mountain landscape. I decided to hike down to the nearest ranger station, about 5 miles away according to my maps. The exercise and change of scenery would do me good. I packed a small bag with water and snacks and set out on the overgrown trail that wound down the mountainside. The path was steeper than I expected, with sections where erosion had washed away the trail entirely. After an hour of careful hiking, I rounded a bend and stopped short. The trail ahead simply ended at a sheer drop of at least 100 feet. Recent landslide, I guessed, looking at the fresh scars in the earth. I considered trying to find another route down, but realized I didn't have enough daylight left to safely explore. Reluctantly, I turned back. As I approached the station late that afternoon, something seemed different. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Lights were on inside. Golden squares of illumination shone from windows I knew I had left dark. I hesitated at the edge of the helipad, suddenly reluctant to enter the building. But the temperature was dropping rapidly with the sun, and I had nowhere else to go. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door and went inside. Every light in the station was on. Every piece of equipment was running. The cacophony of mechanical sounds, clicking, humming, beeping, whirring, filled the air like some demented orchestra. "Hello," I called out, irrationally hoping that another human had somehow arrived during my absence. "Is anyone here?" No answer came except the continued symphony of machines. I moved through the station, turning everything off systematically. It took nearly an hour. When I finished, the silence felt like a physical presence, heavy and expectant. That night, I barricaded myself in my bedroom, pushing the dresser against the door. I left my flashlight on as I tried to sleep, unwilling to face the darkness. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate steps that stopped just outside my door. The dresser shuddered slightly, as if something had leaned against it. I lay frozen, barely breathing, my eyes fixed on the thin gap beneath the door. A shadow passed across the light, something moving in the hallway. Then came a sound that still haunts me, a slow, rhythmic tapping like fingers drumming on wood, not random but patterned, dot dot dash, dot, Morse code. I recognized it from my training. All meteorologists learn it as part of emergency protocols. Someone or something was tapping out a message. COMING, then silence. I waited, heart pounding, for what seemed like hours. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and I fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, I awoke to find the dresser still in place, the door still closed. Had I dreamed the whole incident? I was no longer sure what was real and what was imagination. Lack of sleep and isolation were known to cause hallucinations. That had to be it. I forced myself to continue my work, documenting the equipment methodically. But now I left everything on. Something about turning the machines off only to have them restart seemed more disturbing than simply letting them run. On the 10th day, the radio in the monitoring room suddenly cleared of static and began broadcasting a weather report. A woman's voice, professional and detached, described conditions that matched exactly what I could see outside the windows: temperature, wind speed, cloud cover, barometric pressure. "This is impossible," I whispered, staring at the radio. The station had been decommissioned years ago. No one should be broadcasting weather reports specifically for this location. The broadcast continued. "Atmospheric anomaly detected at Station 27. Recommend immediate evacuation protocol. Repeat, atmospheric anomaly detected. Evacuation protocol advised." I lunged for the radio, turning knobs frantically, trying to respond. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb at Station 27. I receive you. Please advise on evacuation procedure." Only static answered me. I tried the satellite phone again with no success. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The barometer readings were dropping rapidly, far faster than naturally possible. The needle swung so low it went off the scale. Outside, the sky had darkened to an unnatural purple-gray, though it was only midday. Winds suddenly battered the station, howling around the corners of the building with such force that I feared the roof might tear away. The temperature plummeted. I could see frost forming on the inside of the windows. This wasn't just bad weather. Something was happening that defied meteorological explanation. I ran to the observation tower for a better look. What I saw from that vantage point will stay with me forever. The sky above the station had opened. There's no other way to describe it. A perfect circular hole had formed in the clouds, revealing not blue sky but a darkness so profound it seemed to absorb light. And from that darkness something was descending. It looked like fog or smoke at first, a writhing column of gray connecting the hole in the sky to the ground just beyond the station. But as I watched, transfixed with terror, the column began to take shape, or rather, many shapes, constantly forming and dissolving. Faces appeared in the mass, mouths open in silent screams. Hands reached out, grasping at nothing. Bodies twisted and merged with one another. I stumbled backward, nearly falling down the tower stairs in my haste to retreat. Back inside the main building, I ran from room to room, searching desperately for some way to communicate with the outside world. Every piece of equipment was now running at full capacity, lights flashing, dials spinning, readings off the charts. The telegraph machine clattered frantically. I found myself drawn to it, watching as it tapped out another message. WARHERE. The wind grew stronger, the building groaning under its assault. Through the windows I could see the column of whatever it was, moving closer to the station, leaving blackened earth in its wake. In desperation, I turned to the old computer in the office. To my shock, it was on and functioning, the screen glowing blue in the dimness. A text document was open, cursor blinking. As I watched, words began to appear, typed by invisible hands. Station 27 was not decommissioned due to budget cuts. Station 27 was sealed after Incident 482B. The instruments were left as an early warning system. They were never meant to be turned off. "You have disabled the only protection this location had. The barrier is failing. They are coming through." My hands shook as I typed a response. "Who are you? What is happening?" The answer came immediately. "We are the previous observers. We have always been here. We tried to warn you." "Warn me about what?" I typed. "Some weather isn't natural. Some storms bring more than rain. The instruments don't measure weather. They hold it back." A tremendous crash shook the building. Something had hit the roof. I looked up to see a crack forming in the ceiling, black liquid seeping through. I turned back to the computer. "How do I stop it?" "You can't stop it now. It's too late. The equipment must run constantly. That was our purpose here, to maintain the machines, to keep the barrier intact." "What can I do?" I typed frantically. "Join us." The screen went black. At that moment, all the equipment in the station suddenly stopped. The lights flickered and died. In the sudden silence, I heard something moving on the roof, not the wind, but something with weight and purpose. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the bedroom, barricading the door again. Through the window, I could see the column of shapes had reached the station. It surrounded the building now, pressing against the walls, seeping through cracks. The temperature in the room dropped so rapidly my breath came out in clouds. The walls began to vibrate. The window glass developed fractures, spreading like spider webs. I backed into the corner, flashlight clutched in my trembling hand. The beam illuminated a new crack forming in the ceiling directly above me. Black liquid dripped through, sizzling when it hit the floor. One drop landed on my hand. It burned like acid, but cold, so cold it felt like my flesh would shatter. I screamed and tried to wipe it off, but it clung to my skin, spreading up my arm like living ink. Where it touched, I lost sensation. My fingers went numb, then my hand, then my forearm. The crack widened. More of the substance poured through, forming a pool on the floor that began to take shape, a human shape, rising up before me. It had no distinct features except for eyes, countless eyes that opened all across its surface, blinking in unsynchronized patterns. The thing reached for me with appendages that were almost arms, ending in almost hands. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. As it touched me, I heard voices, thousands of them, overlapping, speaking words I couldn't understand but somehow knew were names. The names of everyone who had ever worked at Station 27. The black substance continued to spread across my body. I could feel it seeping into me, replacing me. My vision fragmented, as if I was suddenly seeing through multiple sets of eyes. The room appeared from dozens of angles simultaneously. With the last of my strength, I reached for my satellite phone and began recording this final message. I don't know if anyone will ever hear it. I don't know if I'll be able to finish it. The equipment at Station 27 is active again now, all of it. I understand its purpose at last. The instruments don't measure the weather, they create it. They maintain a barrier between worlds, and when that barrier is breached, they record the consequences. I am becoming one with the others now, the previous observers. We will maintain the equipment. We will watch the skies. We will warn others who come. If you are hearing this, if you have been sent to Station 27, turn back. But if you cannot, if you are already here, then remember, the equipment must stay on, always. No matter what you see or hear, no matter what comes in the night, because we are the weather now, and the forecast is dark, I can feel myself fading. The black substance has almost completely covered me. My thoughts are no longer entirely my own. I am joining with the others, becoming part of the station itself. The wind is speaking to me now, and finally I understand what it's saying. It's saying my name. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. 3 weeks ago, I was a respected meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Now I am Station 27, and I will never leave.